jam track massacre coming at you. Now, when you're playing in A minor, you're gonna need to know four, where's the camera at here? 4 different major scales, right? Starting with the C scale. Right? Right, C major scale for when you're playing in A with A as the 6th chord, right? A, B, C, 6, 7 octave. So when you're in A minor, A is the 6th chord, right? It's the 1 chord, but it's the 6th chord. It's La. But when you're in G, and you go up to A minor, then you're playing in A minor Dorian, which is the 2 scale, right? So when you're playing in A minor and your 4 chord has a major third in it, you're actually playing in the major scale a whole step below you, because right, so you have to know the G scale to play Let me grab a pick here. This all sounds so good when I'm thinking about it. So you know what I mean? So when you're in A minor, if you have a natural 6, you're on the 2 scale. But if you have a flat 6, you're on the 6th scale. And if you have a flat 2, you're on this 3 scale. Right? So you need to know the F scale. Because the F scale, F is 1, 1, 2, 3. So Phrygian is the 3 scale. So A Phrygian is F. Right? Let me get that right. 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 A Phrygian is the 3 scale. So that's F. Right? So real closely related to that is B flat. Right? B flat is A Locrian. Remember, Locrian is just a blues scale with a flat second. But you can always, whenever you see that pattern, you always know that's 1, or that's 6, and this is 1. And of course, Locrian is the 7 scale, so that would make sense. So when you're playing in Locrian, A Locrian, you have to know the major scale that is a half step above that, right? So B flat. Right, and it might seem funny because who knows the major scale? So telling someone, oh, well, if you know these major scales, you can play in that minor key is definitely putting the horse before the cart if you grew up like me, not using the major scale much. But you have to orient yourself to where the tritone is and that's how you do it. That's one way to do it. There's a bunch of ways to do it. And in this video, we're talking about how a good way to shift, because when you're writing in minor, you're going to use all 4 of those modes sometimes in the same song, if not in the same line, right? Because you might go Dorian, Aeolian, Phrygian, Locrian, Aeolian, Dorian, Aeolian, Locrian, harmonic minor, and that's not including, you might be using, because whenever you get to your major 7th in a minor key, you have your option. Like if you're in Dorian and you go to do your turnaround, then you're mixing a 6 with a major 7. So do melodic minor. But if you're in Aeolian and you go to do your turnaround, use harmonic minor. Because I mean, if you just came out of a chord that has a C note in it, turn around on the C note. If you came out of a chord that has a C sharp in it, turn around on the C sharp. You know what I mean? Forget about blah blah blah, whoop whoop whoop, melodic minor when it's ascending and all this other shit. Dude, if you're coming off of if you're, you know what I mean? If the melody or the chord has a 6 step in it, in this case a F sharp, you know what I mean? Use a melodic minor turnaround. If it's got an F in it, just use a harmonic minor turnaround. That's, you know what I mean? I don't know how else to explain it. You know what I mean? That F note's just not going to work if the 4 chord is a major. You know what I mean? So it's it's just the same thing. When you come off of when you're in A minor and you get to your 5 chord, if you're like me, you're probably going to be rolling down on the thing out of a reverse triad. But if you're planning on getting back to A right there, you're going to want to think about making that G sharp right there so you can lead your way back. But if you do it, it's going to sound obvious, and it's going to sound real European. And if you do a major 7th, it's going to sound real black. So I mean, you got your choice there. You can approach it classically, or you can approach it, you know what I mean, in a blues sense, but it's still the same thing. It's just a leading tone. And the other thing about leading tones is they work both ways. You know what I mean? You can get a half a step above the note and fall down on it the same way. So a flat second will drag you back to the root just as easy as a major 7th. And if you don't believe me, the tritone could either be from the 5 chord. It could either be a dominant 7th, or it could be the flat 2nd chord. Right? So it is actually, you can, whenever you do your tritone, if you substitute the other chord for it, which happens to be a away, right? I mean, it's literally a tritone away. That's what's hilarious about tritone substitution, is you'll be, the worst possible other chord you could think of is what you'll be coming back with. Because, you know what I mean, you have two choices with a tritone. It could either be a 5/7 chord, or it can be a flat 2/7 chord. Right? And that, either way, that's going to either lead you above the writ or below it. Right? So, and you can practice that by just playing a triad. And then when you want to go to a new chord, just hit the flat 2 of the chord. And to slide into the chord, instead of sliding into the chord from the major 7th behind it, slide down into it, right? Walking bass line. That's all a walking bass line is at its root, is tritones connected by leading tones to tell you where the next chord is. And that leading tone can either be a half step above the chord that you're going to, or a half step below. And that's why secondary dominants are magic, especially if you use a secondary dominant and then you substitute it with the dominant chord that's a tritone away from there. You know what I mean? You just end up with this cascading diatonic chromatic line. You know what I mean? You can't beat that. And that is the trickery behind it. So anyway, when you're fingering these minor chords, these minor, when you're in the minor position, remember that you've got your Dorian-ish, your 6th there, or your 4 chord might be, have that minor 7th, in which case the relative major will move up here, right? And there's always going to be 2 different 7 chords, because you got your regular one, or your 2 different 5 chords, the one that's minor or the dominant one. You know, remember your first inversions. See, if you're playing on the 2 chord, then 1's going to be back here. So if you're in A minor Dorian, your 4 and your 5 chord, they're going to be C and D. Whereas if you're in A minor Aeolian, because you're on the 6th chord, then your 4 and your 5 chord are going to be F and G. And it's real important, whatever key you're in, to figure out where the 4 and the 5 chord is. And what I mean by that is where the 2 major triads that are a whole step apart are, right? And let's just do that. In Aeolian, just play the A minor chord, and then find your 4 and your 5. Well, you're on 6, so it'll be pretty easy. 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. But if you're on the 2 chord already, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2, 4, 5, 2. 4, 5, 5. Remember these, both of these 4 and the 5 are going to have major thirds in them, right? In this scenario, 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, 2. Whereas if you're on the 7, then you're seven, 4, 5, 7, 4, because remember 7 is, see here's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, right? And then of course if you're on 3, because you're in Phrygian, 3, minor, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3. And you know, the same goes for the 2 minor chords, 2 and 3, right? Because if you're on 6, then 2 and 3 are 4 and 5. But if you're on 2, then 2, 3, and 6 are, and become 1, 2, and 5. Right? So right? Whereas if you're in Locrian, you know what I mean? You got 3 missing minor chords because you're on the diminished chord in the first place. So they're easy to find. You just go a whole step back. 6, 2, 3, 7, 6, 2, 3. Right? So let's just go over the triads that get underneath of your hands when you're holding an A minor chord. First, see the A, B, C. So there's a C, and remember that you can get your 3, your 6, your 9, whatever 11 that you need, and your major 7th, flat 7th, flat, whatever you need there, right? All. There's the 5, and the octave, you know. In Cage, we call that a G form, but it's a C chord. Right? And then, and of course, when you're in the D, in the 4 position, the 4 chord, it could be major, minor, it might be a minor 7th. It might be a major 7th, you know what I mean? Could be whatever you want it to be. And then of course when you get up to the E, the 5 chord, it can be minor, major, dominant, upper voicings, whatever you need, 9s, 11s, etc. But it's real important to see that, right? See that D minor shape, or the minor triad right there, D minor triad, and then the E minor triad, which can turn into E major triad, right? And then the A minor triad. And then the major triads that are, right? Right, see that one? The G, and then the F. But remember, you could also be playing an F sharp minor right there. It just depends on what key you're in, what mode you're in. So, you know what I mean? When your root is the third, you got some options there. It could either be part of a major triad, it could be part of a minor triad, you know. And then, so it's real important to be able to visualize that shape, and then this shape, and especially the inversions of them. You're playing in this position, but you need to be able to step out to the one below it and the one above it. Right? So if you're in A minor, you got to get up to the 8th fret and go 1, 4, 5, 1. And you also need to be able to go back to the 4th fret. Right? So there's a E major triad back there that is used to resolve back to A or A minor. And then you also need to know your second inversions on the 5th string, on the A string. Those are just chords without the bar. But some of them are major and some of them are minor, and it depends on where you're at. And then the same with the second inversions on the A string look like that, whereas first inversions are like when you got a C and then you slide the root up 2 whole steps, or unless it's a minor. Right? And those are, you need to you know, whereas a first inversion looks like that, the second inversion is right behind it, but it takes you down a perfect 4th. And all of these, all of this stuff, it doesn't come to life until you take a melody, right, and then make a chord progression to it, and then tweak it so that the melody notes define the chord progression. Otherwise, you're just, you know what I mean? You're just shredding chords, basically. You're just flailing chords, you know? But it's real important that you know how to daisy chain 7th chords so that your triads aren't apart from each other. And then you can see how, if you just play every other note of the scale instead of every note of the scale, you'll see how all chords are interrelated. Right? So when you're in A minor, instead of going, go. Right? And then you'll see that A minor is connected to C major, and that's connected to E minor, which is connected to G major, which is connected to D minor, which is connected to F. See? F, D minor, G major. What's that right there? There's a diminished one right there, right? B diminished, right? E minor. So F major, D minor, B diminished, G major, E minor, C major, A minor, right? And if you play inside of that, by starting on B diminished, you get that B diminished connected to D minor, connected to A major, connected to F major, B diminished, connected to D minor, connected to F major, connected to A minor, connected to G, connected to D, connected to E minor. So it goes over every other one. And that's just looking at them as triads. You can look at them as seventh chords by just going seventh chord, and so forth and so on. So, you know what I mean? You've got all your, and then, so you have your triads and how they're connected in one position. And then also you have your double stops that are perfect fourths and how those form the Chinese pentatonic or whatever. Cowboy and Indian music, you know. And that's just playing two strings side by side. And on the second and third string, offset them a fret. And what chord you're playing is the high string. So this isn't an E, this is an A, right? So A, B diminished, C. A, B, C. So this is F, G, A. C, D, E, F, G, A. So A, B diminished, A minor, B diminished, C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. So not only do you need to know how to do the perfect fourths in every position, but you also need to know the diatonic thirds. You know, and it changes depending on what mode you're in. You know, if you're in Dorian, Locrian, Phrygian, or Aeolian, you'll have to make the fingering adjustments on your series because where the tritone is moved, right? Same goes for melodic minor, harmonic minor, and if you're doing a diminished or augmented run, right? And so then, there's your perfect fourths, there's your diatonic thirds, and you also, of course, need to know your fifths. Fifths are easy. They're all six perfect, except for the tritone. Same with fourths. But here, so here's a third. Here's a fourth. And here's a fifth. And as you can imagine, if you skip a string, you can also learn your sixes, nines, 11ths, and how they connect in parallel form, in diatonic form, depending on what mode you're in, right? Especially your sevenths, because with your sevenths, some of them are minor sevenths, some of them are major sevenths, and some of them are you know what I mean? And then there's the diminished one. So the dominant seventh, right? So there's 3 minor seventh ones, a diminished seventh, and then the 2 major ones, major sevenths, and 1 dominant seventh, right? So there's only 1 dominant seventh. It's kind of like a 6, or it's kind of like the 5th and the 4th. There's only 1 tritone, right? So 6. Anyway, I digress. Right? Try to get that angled line. So, you know what I mean? Don't try using your pinky on the low strings. Always use your 3rd finger and then angle your fingers, right? And keep your knuckles spread apart. There's all these little muscles that are in between your fingers, and you can tell when your fingers collapse on each other and you have to hold them together to push the strings. You'll know that you have lost your muscles in between there, or that they never existed in the first place. But if you want to play real elegant hand positions and have a lot of control when you're not hanging your thumb over, then you need to always keep your fingers apart like that. Don't let the insides of your fingers touch each other. Always keep them cocked apart like that. You know what I mean? And try to keep all 4 of your fingertips on the same plane. Right? I have long middle fingers, so I have to curl them up to put them on the same line as my pinky and my forefinger. And so people always say, oh, you have long fingers. Well, they're really getting in the way, you know what I mean? Because I have to curl them up. And so you need to do that too. You got to spread them out, curl them up, and if you stick them on a table so that they're on a flat line, you'll see what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? If you spread your knuckles out and put all your fingers on the same string, doesn't matter how far apart they are, but just put them on the same string, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then do the same thing and put them all on the same fret. All right, because that's what the guitar is about. Pivot your hand so that your thumb hangs over. And then twist your wrist so that your pinky falls down. All right? There's 2 positions. And now roll your wrist forward and push your wrist so it's out in front of the fretboard instead of being back here. Push it out and then pivot it in like that so that your pinky, all right? So your pinky goes towards this E string, low string. Touch the fretboard, touch the neck with the outside of your palm. All right? And now touch it with the inside of your palm in between your thumb and your forefinger. See that pivot right there? See how now all my fingers are going across a fret? When I let that side of my hand touch the neck, on the bottom. But if I pivot like this, and I let this side of my hand touch the neck on the bottom, then all my fingers are running across the string. Right? So don't get into this situation, you know what I mean? If your pinky is having to go like that, cool, because you're fingering a jazz chord, right? But if you're running a line and you're having to go like that, your hand's in the wrong position. You know what I mean? When you run lines on the low E string, or whatever string it is on your guitar, bring your palm out, pivot your palm on your thumb so that it's over, so your pinky's over there. Then you don't get into this whole thing. Ooh. Right? So then, you know, same thing. When you're playing with your thumb, bring this part of your hand back behind the guitar and up so that you're down over it. And when you see, you can't see my thumb now because you know. But, you know, if you pinch the guitar right here between that part of your hand and your first finger, your fingers turn into like a fucking spring, especially that second one, and you can really shred, and you have control. You know what I mean? And if you then put your thumb over and grab a hold of that fucker so that right, your hand's touching there, you got it gripped right there, you know, and then all you have to do is learn how to get them fingers over there and fucking wag them, you know. All right, I'll end this lesson with just the slides, you know. Now repeat that. Slide up on the G string to the 9th fret, and then hit the 8th fret on the B string, and then go back down the G string, hammer up, pull off. Right? You always want to repeat this phrase an octave lower. And then 3 frets higher. Right? You can do whatever you want. Right? Just remember, after you repeat your phrase on the octave, or you repeat it on the root, then you repeat it on the 5th, go to a new octave then. Or else your line's going to become not harmonic. You know, if you go, right? You know, if you're going to repeat yourself, you either have to repeat yourself on the 3rd, the 5th, the 4th, or jump to a new octave to repeat yourself again. Otherwise, you'll fall out of register with what you're doing. And that's what people talk when people say, repeat your lines across the octaves, you know, instead of going, right? So right there, you got to go. Right there, start the line over again. Right here. Repeat it. Repeat it, you know. jump octaves, jumped octaves, right? Right, so you want to group your 16th notes or your 12/8, or whatever, so that when it's time to jump to the next octave, you do it. When it's time to get to the next measure, you jump octaves, right? Otherwise, you want to make. Otherwise, you're going to go off key with a harmony, unless there's a chord change, and you've planned it so that you head into the upper extensions, and now you're in the 11th, 9th, and 13th chords, but it's convenient because the chord progression changed right there. That's what's so nice about going down to that chord, because usually by the time the guitar player falls off kilter because he's doing a 7-note scale over triplets, right? So he's got a 6-note thing going, and he's using a 7-note run. If you don't switch chords when he gets there, you know what I mean? He's going to head off into flat 13th land real quick in the solo. And so that's why you got to jump across the octaves after you've only used 4 notes or whatever. Otherwise, it's going to sound like you're noodling, and then you're going to need to find your place again. And so when you are shredding a 7-note line, make sure that you shift slide, because if you, like with me, I'll end up right there on the chord change, and it's just like, why are you always playing a minor second note in the middle of the line, So it helps if you, you know what I mean? Anytime you know that you're flailing hard, and there's probably 0 chance, there's a 1 in 7 chance, right? Yeah, that you're going to land on the root of the next chord. You might land on the 3rd or the 5th, but there's 4 notes that you might land on that you don't want. So always just, as soon as you hear that chord change coming, come off your run and just slide up into a different position, because you're going to be out of register. You know what I mean? It's unavoidable. Or you can quit playing 7-note runs and only play 4 and 6-note runs, and you'll be much happier and you'll sound a lot better. And when you're looking at a 6-note run, you can either look at it as 2 chords, like the 4 chord and the 5 chord. They've got 3, 5. That's the problem with the 1 chord and the 4 chord. The 1 chord and the 4 chord, because the 4 chord shares the tonic note, they've only got 5 notes between them. The 4 chord and the 5 chord, they've got 6 notes between them, right? But that same 6 notes you can get if you use the minor pentatonic and then the minor pentatonic that is a 5th down, you know what I mean, the Phrygian minor pentatonic. So if you take a perfect 4th, if you do 2 minor pentatonics, a perfect 4th apart, blend them together, you end up with a 6-note composite scale that will come in real handy. And you can either think of those 6 notes as being 2 separate minor pentatonics, or you can think of them as being 2 separate triads. A Black Cracker coming at you, Jam Track Massacre, hit the bell, like, subscribe, and check out my other videos.